Alright, to make faces, first all you gotta do is connect everything. You want to take the mirror, and then start at a point, and just start connecting lines. You kind of gotta do them one at a time. This is where you're gonna discover where you need to add or remove more vertexes to make sure everything matches up. See, I got the start. You have to have, when you enclose something, it needs to have 4 points or 3 points, or it won't make a face. If it's got 5 points or 6 points, a face is not going to be able to be created. Alright, now that I have these ready, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the entire area here, and I'm going to press Ctrl J, which is attach approximate, so I know that everything here is really attached, otherwise a face won't be made. And then I'm going to go to Face, Create Face, and Paint All, and this creates a whole bunch of faces. And you can use this color palette. You can use this color palette to paint faces. I can choose a color and select to paint, or you could select individual faces and paint them, but I'm not going to do that. Any color is really fine. So yeah, we got our faces going on, and you can always adjust your points so everything looks a little rounder and nicer. It's not really that hard. Like, I can just move this thing up a little bit, kind of move it along, looks a little better, you know, stuff like that. And then we're gonna do this with the whole thing. You're gonna have to delete some faces sometimes, mostly because of how edge cut works, and I'm gonna show you that in a second. And since I'm using the mirror tool, this is doing both sides at once. I'm not sure how I want to cut up this hole, actually. Gonna connect everything. Oops. Also, double clicking is how you end it. Like, I click once, click twice, then I double click and that stops. So if you need to know how to do that, just to say. And see, it looks like there's not going to be enough points to line up here, so I'm going to use the edge cut. I'm going to click here, I'm going to press comma because that's the shortcut to make an edge cut. I'm going to kind of move things around a little bit. Make sure this is matching up. Sure, it looks great. Now I can line everything up. I'm not going to be able to line everything up here because there's much more detail in the nose and the mouth than there is on the sides. So I'm just going to kind of attach them whichever way for now and deal with that later. Anyway, we've got all these attached, but they're still not actually attached, or they might not be, so we're going to double check that. I'm going to select everything, press Ctrl J. Nothing was so close that it attached automatically, so that's good. Do it again. And I'm going to go to Face, Create Face, and Paint All. I can create faces individually too by, like, I'll show you right here. See how this isn't working? So, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces, that's too many, so I'm actually just going to connect these two so that we have a 3 and a 4. Going to make sure it's actually connected by selecting it and pressing Ctrl J and doing the same to this one. Whatever you do to this side happens on this side, so don't worry about that. And then I am going to select, hold Shift, and select all the faces, or all the sides here that I want to do. So holding Shift allows you to select multiple things. Then I'm going to go to Face, and I'm going to create face in paint selection, and that'll create a face in paint where I selected. Oh, notice how a face didn't get created here. That means there was still something unconnected. So I'm gonna Control J on like every one of these corners just to be double, triple sure. Hold Shift, select all these, face, create face in paint selection. There we go, it worked. And this kind of is creating like a weird dip here because of how I connected it. So we're gonna want to go back and add another thing here. And this is a good chance to show you what edge cut does if there's faces. So if I select a single line and edge cut by pressing the comma button, it creates an edge along the entire row. So if I did the same here, it would create an edge along this entire row. If you only wanted to create one new point, you'd have to delete the faces here so that it was just lines, so that it wouldn't do that. And when we create new lines, they're going to be flat, so we can go to the top view here, oops, and kind of move things around so that everything's a little more nice and round. I can go to a side view, make sure everything is nice. See, the problem with having you kind of want to avoid having triangles as much as possible because it sometimes makes like kind of wonky areas like this that you got to deal with. See, I gotta kind of rotate to a different view and try to make sure that it's flat. Check from the top. And you can kind of look along. You're going to want to rotate a whole lot just to see if everything is looking presentable, I guess. Like, I feel like these should be coming out a little more, actually, to be a little rounder. And you're going to do a whole lot of fine-tuning. So don't be afraid to just slide stuff around and double check that everything is going as planned. Yeah, it looks a little better. So that's what the edge cut does if you have it like that. Also, you should be careful when using the create face and paint all, because sometimes it'll create faces where you don't want them. Like, if I have some points that are weird, it might make a face where I don't want it. I'm not sure how to explain it. It happened before, but... So, just be careful with it. It might automatically generate a face where you don't want a face. Anyway, this is what we got so far. It looks pretty good. If you notice anything weird with the shading, you can go to face and uniform the normals, and that'll make sure everything looks alright. Anyway, then we want to add detail to the mouth area, which is not too hard. I'm going to like start from here, and actually first I'm going to delete a bunch of faces here. If you delete faces, you have to do it on both sides. It doesn't mirror, unfortunately. Anyway, you want to delete a bunch of faces so that the edge cut works. And I'm gonna create a new edge here, here, here. And then I'm gonna take the mirror tool. I'm gonna make some connections here. You can go all the way down to the chin and all the way up to the top if you want. You can do whatever you need to do. How I do it is not always the right way to split everything up. I'm going to need a couple new faces, or a couple new points here to match up with the points here. Then I'm going to connect them. And I'm gonna move things a little bit. Anime faces kind of have like a snout area, so if that's what you're aiming to create, you can do it here. And then I can move this point inward to kind of define where the nose is going. And my eyes are gonna need to be pretty wide, so I can use my background image to test here. I can decide that this is where I want the nose bridge to start coming up right here. I can take this all the way up to here if I want, or whatever. I can decide I want this more inward. I can have the lips come in like this. Maybe have the lips more smiling. I can bring them up to have like a smile and add more detail in here later, but I'm gonna tell you right now that sort of doing that kind of makes it hard to fold. I can actually even press Ctrl J here and join these 2 points. So that I kind of have like the lips happening here. So he's kind of got like a smile going on. And then I did a lot of creating new points and stuff, so I'm going to want to highlight everything and press Ctrl J. So that makes sure everything's connected. I'm going to face, create face and paint all. And it didn't create any weird faces, but if you notice, there's still 2 points that don't have anywhere to go right here. So I can connect those. I can create a whole edge all the way around just to make sure I don't have any triangles. Or I can just make some triangles. Triangles should be avoided in most 3D programs, mostly if you're doing animation or like game work, just because triangles create a lot of problems for that kind of thing. I'm going to use Ctrl J here to make sure everything's connected. But for what we're doing, triangles aren't that much of a problem, so like don't worry about it too hard unless your shapes are turning out weird. And just in case, I'm gonna hold Shift and select everything individually. Oops. You gotta be careful when doing this, because sometimes you don't click exactly and lose all your selections. I'm gonna select everything, create face and paint selection, and now we have a bunch of faces. Oh, this one didn't work, so I gotta make sure everything's connected. Control J. Control J, Control J, gonna select it. You can also use Control F to create a face that you've selected. I'm gonna make sure that the normals are okay. And we got a pretty good start. And I can move it and I think this sticks out too much, so I can make, if you're at an angle that isn't the front or the side, you're going to see 3 bars, and this one is going to go this way or up and down, so you can just click on one and make sure you're not doing anything weird. And I can go from the front and adjust it this way too. Everything has to be in the right place on the X, Y, and Z axis, so you want to make sure. There we go. Or maybe I decide that I actually want this to come out a little more right here. And then from the side, I actually want it to come inwards a little more. It's totally up to you. my side view looks pretty good. And depending on your character, you might have a flatter, you might have no dip here, or you might have a more extreme dip. It just depends on what you're doing. And this is the very basics. And then you would probably add another line here and here. And we can actually just do this with the edge cut. See how it makes a cut along the whole form? And then you can freely slide everything around. Like, say I want to make sure the area for the eyes is nice and lined, is nice and shaped out. I can actually kind of form it around where I want the eyes to be, so that I know that my eye area is what I want it to be. You gotta kind of check things from all sides, because notice it's kind of being really weird here. Actually, it might be sorry, my voice is going. And you just kind of move crap around, make sure everything lines up. It's pretty much up to you how you want things to go. Maybe I don't want this like that. Maybe I want it more like that. Maybe I want this higher up this way. And this is kind of weird. I might delete that line there. And then I can decide how horizontally I want my eyes to go, because see, my eyes are going to need to come out to at least here, but I don't want the eyes to come this far back. You see? So I'm going to bring this up, because I'm going to want my eyes to be about this size from the side. Because you want to make sure everything looks good from every angle. Oops. When you create new lines from the edge cut, you have to do a lot of editing that way, but it's alright. And there we go, now my eyes have a much flatter plane to sit on, see? I can even move this in a little bit, or move this out a little bit to make sure everything's... You're gonna sand this all down and stuff in person anyway, so... Yeah, it takes kind of a while. When I do a full model, it'll take me a good amount of time to get everything finished. And then, like, I want the stuff at top here to look more circular, so I'm gonna pull these out, make them more circular. And leave kind of a dip area for the eyes to go into. Nose looks pretty good. Looks pretty good so far. You got the basic shape of your face here. You can even leave areas like this really simple, because they're going to be very flattish areas when you actually sculpt the thing anyway. And I can even decide that the top view looks kind of not round enough, so I can even decide to move this back, even though I originally had it closer forward. I can move it back a little bit. The curve actually still looks good, so I can leave it like that. And I got a pretty good shape going on here. So that's the basics of it. And now you're going to want to save it out and save it so that you can open it in the Papercraft program, which I'm going to cover very briefly here. I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on it. There's plenty of tutorials, plenty of forums about doing paper craft and stuff. Alright, I'm going to save as. I'm going to say paper model. You can name it after your character, whatever. I'm going to save an ACE file, because that's what I've been working in. By the way, I should mention a few other tools here, like the pan view tool lets me do like this. This is the scale tool. It works like any other scale tool. Stuff like that, not really important. The scale will only matter in the Papercraft program. Anyway, I'm gonna save this also as a 3DS file right here at the bottom, because the Papercraft program does not read ACE files, it reads 3DS files and a few others. So I'm gonna save that. So now I have this saved as a 3DS file. Oh, by the way, in View you can also do other weird stuff, like you can click smoothing faces, you can see it with smooth shadows, or you could select only to show the faces, so you can see like a kind of preview of what it'll look like more smoothed out. Or you could show just the wireframe. Whatever you want. And there's a whole lot of tools here you can play with. Like you can align a bunch of points to the same axis. You can attach a loop. I don't know what that is. You can do a lot of different things. But this is really all you need to know. Alright, I saved it as a 3DS file. So now I am going to open up Pepakura Designer 3. This is what this program looks like. File, open, 3DS file here. And it's going to give you some options right away. It's going to ask flip faces. If it looks really dark, you want to flip them. If it looks like a lighter gray, you don't want to flip them, so I'm going to flip them. Then it asks you, which is the front? This is the front. Which is the bottom? This is the bottom. No invert. And then it's going to automatically merge some things, but this is pretty much how it'll look. So you got this open in the program. You can play with this program. It works a little differently. I have to right click to rotate, and I have to click with another button to zoom, or I could use the tools up here. There's a lot of tutorials about this. Anyway, did I cut out at all? Is it still going okay? Yeah? Okay. Alright, and then the last thing I'm going to do is show you how to unfold it and show you how to scale it. There's a lot of options in this program that you're going to have to play with. I'm just going to tell you what I do. Before I unfold it, I'm going to turn the mirror on so that it'll select mirror things. And then I'm going to specify open edges with this little tool that looks like a box cutter. And I'm going to cut it in half just because I like to work in halves. And you want to have your thing cut in kind of small pieces, because otherwise they're not going to fit on a single printed piece of paper, or they're going to be too big to print separately. Maybe I'll leave this cap. You can kind of choose what you want to cut out. The more you do this, the more you're going to know what's a good way to cut it for putting together in real life and what's bad ways to cut it. I can't really explain too well, but actually thin slices are actually good. if you have two square areas, they're going to be harder to cut out and fold, things like that. Or maybe I'd want to cut the mouth here so I know that I'm doing the mouth separately, but whatever. This is good enough for now. Anyway, then I'm going to click unfold, and it's going to automatically unfold everything into as many pieces as it deems acceptable. And then you're going to want to go to in the 2D menu, and you want to change scale. Go to scale factor, and you're going to want to change the scale to how tall you want the mask to be. You'll have measured this beforehand, or you should have a basic idea beforehand how big you want it to be. I'm going to go with, I forget the exacts. I think 280 millimeters is like 11 inches, close to it. Something like that. So now it automatically scaled it so that it's going to be that many millimeters tall when you build it. But if you notice, these pieces are way too big to fit on the sheets of paper that it's got here. You're also going to want to set the paper in print and paper settings. You want to set it to letter, because that's normal sheets of paper. That's how you're going to print them on the cardstock. You can change some other things here, but now it's letter sized paper. And it's too big, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this tool that looks like a zipper, and we are going to cut some things apart. You have to do them one at a time. We're going to cut those apart. We're going to cut that apart. We're going to cut that apart at, like, here, wherever you think is going to work. And then we're going to take the move tool, and you're going to move stuff around so that everything fits. You want to move stuff around so everything's going to fit. You can even take the rotate tool, which is the next one, and kind of rotate things to make sure they're fitting on a single sheet of paper. It's okay if you cut off a little of the flaps. The flaps aren't as important. The white parts here, the flaps don't need to be exactly the right size, because you can even adjust the flap size somewhere in one of these menus, I think on this button. And you kind of want to sort things so that you're using as few sheets of paper as possible, or you're going to have to pay for more cardstock. And you just move stuff around and experiment until everything fits properly. Try to use as many pieces of paper as necessary. You don't want to use too many sheets. Sometimes I'd spend like an hour just cutting and organizing, making sure everything fits. There we go. Not too bad. Got everything all within the margins. And this is a little above, so I'm going to move it down. And then you can go into the tab settings and choose how high you want the tabs to be. So I made much smaller flaps, or I can make larger flaps. Yes, one square is one sheet, so it will be very big. And if you look close, you're going to see that lines like this are a mountain fold, lines like this are a volley fold, and parts like this are going to be hard to cut out, but you'll figure it out. Anyway, you want to place an edge ID on the inside of the face and make it a a decent sized font. Did it work? Oh, here we go. You want to click show edge ID, because then it'll have these numbers here so you know what to connect to what, otherwise you might get confused. And you want to make sure flaps are showing. And I don't want to see, you want to click texture on off, because that gets rid of this gray, because that gray will make these edge numbers really hard to see, just to let you know. And that's about it. Then you can save this out and get it, go to a print place and get it printed on cardstock, or if you have your own fancy printer you can do it yourself. You don't want to use regular paper because it'll be too soft. And when you have everything all set up, you want to go to export multiple files bitmap, and then you want to save it to its own folder. And name it whatever, and save them as like a PNG. I don't know how well it'll save JPEGs, so I just do PNG just in case. And then you want to press save, and then you want to make it as high as a resolution as you can. I do 300 because it keeps it under, if the height and width gets over 4,000 pixels, it won't let you do it, so this is good enough. I know from experience. And then it'll save out all of these pieces of paper as individual files for you to be able to print. And someone in the chat is asking me, how would you connect the edges? You connect them pretty easily. These small edges here that are so small that even the flap gets cut off, you can actually just cut off the flap and join them with a spare piece of paper in the back, or you can just use the really small flap. The good thing about cardstock is that it's thick, but it's not so thick that you can't use flaps without it being too much of a thickness difference. So it works out. You kind of figure everything out as you do it. Like, I just used a glue stick and it worked out just fine. And that's about it. And then you print it out and you put it together and you do the rest of the stuff that you need to do that this tutorial is not about. That's it, I guess. I've got it all recorded. I guess I'll try to post it to YouTube. Thanks for coming, guys. I hope you all were able to understand what was happening.